Hey there, it's me, Brandon.
And me, Brittany. And today we're going to learn about the indigenous people who lived here before the settlers.
We just learned a new word today. That word is immemorial.
Quite a mouthful, but I wonder what it means. Let's have a look to see if we can figure it out.
If you look closely, you'll see part of a word you already know. Memory. Immemorial means beyond memory.
That means something has existed for so long that no one really knows how long. Just a really, really, really long time.
Way, way longer than the settlers who came to Oregon around 200 years ago.
Before the settlers came, there were people making a living using the lands around them, fishing, hunting, and collecting a variety of plants for foods, tools, and medicines.
These natural resources were not only used to survive, but also used to trade with other tribes and other traders.
We can tell something about their ways of life from the belongings that have survived.
Oh, looks like we have a question.
So who did live here before the settlers came?
Slahayam Katamai Naikanim Stephanie. Hello, my name is Stephanie Craig, and I am enrolled in the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. So the language I just greeted you in is our Chinook Wawa. It is our language for our tribe. It was also the trade language amongst everyone in the Pacific Northwest. I'm also from the Clackamas Chinook from the Portland Basin area, and Santiam and Yoncalla Kalapuya, Cow Creek Umpqua, and Takelma Rogue River with Iroquois. So Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde just means that there was many different tribes that were brought to Grand Ronde that made up the Confederacy. There is over 37 bands, villages, nations. So today we are at the Chichalu Museum and Cultural Center for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We are outside in the Plank House, which is the front entrance of the museum. My great-great-great-grandmother, so my third great-grandmother, and her sister were down visiting family in the Umpqua. And it was 1855, and the Rogue River Wars had been going on. February of 1855. The government came and rounded up Native Americans. So in Western Oregon, from the Columbia River down to California border, to the coast, to the Cascades, every Native American was rounded up and they were brought to Grand Ronde. So my family was marched. They left Table Rocks in February, and they got up to here at Grand Ronde a month later. They were taken in the middle of the night, and they were, 12 years old. Some of them were babies. Some of them were very, old elders. They weren't allowed to take their toys. They weren't allowed to grab shoes. They weren't allowed to grab anything. They were woken up and made to march for 33 days in winter. That would be so hard. I know myself at that age, if I was 12 or 13, I would be scared. I wouldn't have my parents, I wouldn't know anyone. I'd be with other people from other tribes that I did not know. So once they got here, it was a reservation. They were provided subpar housing. They were made to live like white people and be assimilated. They were given broken tools to farm with. The land here is not great for farming. There's no resources. When they were brought to the reservation, they weren't allowed to speak their language. They weren't allowed to go and gather foods, medicine, plants to make baskets or tools. They weren't allowed to carve. They weren't allowed to partake in their religious ceremonies. It was all stripped away from them, made to go to boarding schools. If it wasn't for Native Americans giving up their rights, there would be no land grabs. There had been no donation land claims to take. It's also important, not only because it's Oregon's history and Polk County's history, but it's your history. As a human, as a Polk County resident, as an Oregon resident, it's your history. Hayumasi Pusnanich, thank you very much for coming and watching today. This is Stephanie Craig with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde at the Chichalu Museum Cultural Center.
It's us again. Do you remember the name of the ancient people who have lived in Polk County since time immemorial?
More than 35 tribes and bands of people from Western Oregon, including the Kalapuya, are now living together as the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. Do you remember the names of any other tribes?
Today, we learned about the forced march of these tribes from hundreds of miles away in the dead of winter. They left behind lands that had belonged to them since time immemorial. Even though they were forced to leave these lands, they brought with them rich cultures, languages and stories, music and dance, basketry, clothing, and toolmaking.
As the Chinook would say, Hayumasi, which means thank you. So this is Brittany.
And this is Brandon, signing off saying Hayumasi and thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Polk County Museum.